Hey everybody, and welcome to DemonSword. Today we're going to discuss the Claymores. Man. Now, as you can see, I've put a katana there for length comparison. That's the Ryan sword. Now, as you can see, just one katana length is about the same length as the entire blade on one Claymore. Now, these are two different types of Claymores, and I'll go into discussion about what a Claymore is and what they're used for. A lot of people will try and compare the katana to a Claymore. Why? Well, they're both bladed objects. Other than that, I really don't see the reason why somebody would actually try to compare these. They are not the same combat tactics. They were not meant to be used in the same way. What do I mean by that? A katana revolved around the idea of one shot, one kill. You drew the blade, and when you struck, you killed one opponent. The Subas were one of the things that actually demonstrated this mentality of a sakura blossom. It blooms once, then falls. That's where the ideology comes from. Or at least was demonstrated in the blade's architecture. Now, a claymore, as you can see from these two, are huge. They're enormous. They're two-handed blades. You would not have a shield. You would usually not actually have armor when you wielded these. That came later about. And actually, the claymores eventually evolved to look more like the rapier done by European blades. It had a basket. It was a lot shorter, and it had one edge. This was one of the latest evolutions of the claymore, but the more traditional claymore is the one right here. Now you're probably asking, where did I get these claymores? The wooden handled one with the brass fittings, that one came from eBay. I think I paid $54 for it on a bidding and won. It also came with a short version, which, you know, was cool. I could wear it around. It was the short sword version of Claymore, one-hander Claymore basically. This one is a William Wallace replica remake made by a Spanish forge. I believe I've showed the symbol on it before, but if you can't, it's right there. It's very faint, so it's laser edge. Now, what do I use the claymores for? I go to some Scottish games, I go to the Renaissance fairs, and, you know, I use them. The only one who's actually sharp is that big guy, which is still sheathed, as you can already pretty much guess. The William Wallace is more for show. Now, claymores, what is this? That's not very functional because it's kind of just a thin piece of crap, or this is more weighted better. These are actually the weight points. On a katana, usually the tip or the way you would arrange the material of the blade would determine where the weight is. Such as like using a bowhide, you can adjust weight by adding that in. Now, a claymore is not a cutting weapon, mainly. It originally was stated to be used, you know, to chop down multiple foes in one strike. But they really didn't have much of an edge. It was because the people wielding these blades had such force that when the blade made contact, it could just cleave through enemies very quickly. And if it didn't cleave through them, it still left a pretty nasty cut that was fatal. Now, these were meant to catch other sword blades, you know. Catch them, and then you would twist your wrists, which would fling the blade out of the opponent's hand. That started to work its way out of claymores, usually. I can't remember the century, but near the end, when they started going against the knights, you know, big armored guys, lots of metal all over them, the claymore could not cleave through them. But how is the claymore still effective against these opponents? Well, it's actually very simple. The claymore's main attribute to damage is the kinetic energy transfer. Look, I mean, there is more mass on this claymore than on that katana. You will transfer more kinetic momentum along this blade when you hit an opponent. So what they started to do, like on this William Wallace, they would add a harder core to the center of the blade. Some would do soft, but traditionally it was a hard core. This kept the blade from breaking or, you know, chipping. Usually the steel quality was really good, again, when compared to like a katana. You can't complain. But what they would do is they'd go up to the knights that were on horseback, or even on the ground. Usually a knight is on horseback, if you didn't know that. well, now you know, they would take the blade and smash it into the sides of the knight. Now, what did this do? This would allow the knight to get the maximum damage into his rib cage, his internal organs. Usually it would dent the armor of the knight inward, maybe a little bit, but the end result was the transfer of the kinetic momentum to the inside of the armor, which was where the knight is, which gave very lethal death blows, usually in about one hit. Now, why did we do that? Well, it was kind of hard to pierce armor, people. And there is a video where you can watch a katana versus a claymore. Not by me, but it's out there. The katana had a pretty good, a traditionally made one can actually do some pretty well, piercing damage, but was never really designed to do piercing strikes as its main point of, death blow. Those were kind of later developed as a skill for, punching between the armor points and such, but the main thing of katana is you take the entire blade and you wrap that edge. So wherever you strike, like you hit back here on like my elbow, you then curve the blade strike all along the entire length of the blade. What does this do? Well, it acts kind of like a saw blade. Think about it. The entire length of the saw blade, when you're, sawing up wood, that edge is going all across the blade and allows it to cut through the wood pretty easily. That's kind of the mentality you're doing with the katana. The claymore is a chopping, bashing weapon. And even if it's not sharp, the thing is still pretty frickin' lethal. Now, why is this one wood and this one leather? Wood like this was more traditional because, they had trees. They could, easily make it. And brass were readily available, and they could shake that really quickly and get it to the blade. That blade is actually made in Pakistan, but so, why is this one leather? This was a later development because you could put one hand here, grip it with two arms basically, like one here, one there, like that, and you could put more kinetic momentum behind it. These were also developed, these club points, so you could bash it into the opponent's skull, if they were too close. Same with the pommel. In a European blade, you would use the entire length of the blade as a weapon, unlike a katana, which you'd use just the blade, or at most, the tsuba. Leather also allowed them to keep attacking without it draining, or not getting too soaked with blood, because wood will be very slick if you've been killing lots of opponents with it. Makes it very hard to keep hold of. Leather, and then they added these metal little ridges inside, give you better grip. So it wasn't, even though it was slick, you could still hold on to the blade. Some other European bastard swords had a chain link system, kind of like my Spanish dagger. Well, I hope to one day have my front yard back in order so I can show you what the claymores actually do to a target. If you have any questions or comments, post them. If you need help, ask. I've got my links to my other things. If you want to check out my other videos, go on to my channel. I also have another channel which deals with firearms. I'm trying to start that one up. If you guys want to view that and learn some things about guns, go for it. DemonSword out. Continue to watch, my friends, and I hope this helped.